details. I'm going to feed that in. And then every time you install a new MCP server, you do have to open up a new thing. So that's what I just did here. Next thing, going to ask me which workspace I want to connect to. I have multiple, so I'll click Connect Workspace here. Then I can just go back, and then I'll say, great, do you have access to my ClickUp MCP? I'll say, awesome, create a new content idea called Claude Code course. Now what it's going to do is scroll through all of my lists. It's then going to search for various ones that I may or may not have. So I have lists called like content ideas and trends and stuff like that. And I'm going to ask it to insert it in my main YouTube queue. So I'm going to do that. And now you can see there's a task called Claude Code course. If I go back here to my ClickUp, open up the specific task, there's now a course that's basically been created. I don't like how the status is archived. So I'm going to say the status is archived right now. And as you see here, it's now set to record. So that's pretty neat. The last thing I want to talk about now is if we go /context and scroll all the way up, you start to get an appreciation for just how many tokens can get used up by poorly drawn or poorly written MCPs. And so in this case, I'm not saying the ClickUp MCP is really that bad. It's not terrible. I've seen many, many far worse ones, but it does consume a hell of a lot of tokens. As you see here, just the ClickUp search tool consumes 1,600. The get workspace hierarchy is 419. This one's 1.1K. If we added all of them up together, as you could see, my MCP tooling is now taking up almost 20,000 tokens. That's actually now more than the system tools, which previously used to be really, really big. And what that means is right off the very get-go, basically like right at the very beginning, we are already at something like 35,000 tokens or so before I enter my prompt, before I enter anything. If you take into account the system prompt as well, we're now at 40,000. If you take into account some memory files and my skills, we're not closer to 45. And this is all before I've sent a message, right? Keep in mind that like 45% is, I don't know, let's just say 45 over 200. That's about equivalent to a quarter. And so 1/4 of all my context, and by the way, this is the highest quality section of my prompt. Like if I were to write actual messages here, this would be the highest quality output. Basically, the highest ROI section is currently being taken up by a ton of MCP tools and stuff. In addition, you'll compare this to skills, and you'll see that scrape leads only takes up 63 tokens. School monitor takes up 59, right? Cross niche outliers takes up 58. So it's like, oh wow, a single one of these MCP tools, like update task, consumes more than basically all of my skills combined. It's kind of like, why the hell would I even use MCP tooling if I can just, do a skill instead? The reason really is just the convenience of it. MCP, as you see, is pretty easy to set up, whereas skills, as you saw, take a little bit longer. That skill back there that does those website designs, that took me, I don't know, probably like 5 minutes end to end to create. Once I've created, it's obviously super efficient and so on and so forth. But, the ClickUp MCP, all I really had to do was just like log in and then give it one line, and then it did that. So basically the way that I personally use MCPs is I use them, aside from the Chrome DevTools MCP, because I just think that's fire and I use it all the time. I use them to very quickly sketch out whether or not something's possible. I'll basically go to a new tool that I want to see if I can integrate, and I'll just say, hey, here's the MCP details. Can we do X, Y, and Z? And then if it can do X, Y, Z the first time, then I'll say, okay, this is great. I want you to take what you just did, and I want you to convert it to a skill instead. And I want you to go and find like the API endpoints and stuff, and then build a script that does all that for me instead of me having to use this super bloated MCP tool. By the way, if you ever wondered why skills consume so few tokens relative to everything else, that's because the whole skill is not actually loaded into context. If we go to the scrape lead skill, the only section here that's actually loaded into context is this section right up here. And this in Markdown format is referred to as the front matter of the file. And so what's really cool is the Claude Code developers realized that they could load in a name, a description, and then some allowed tools to the front matter, and then only feed that into context. And then only if Claude really thinks that it needs to use this, if I specifically say, hey, use the scrape leads file, then and only then will it actually load it all, which means I get most of the benefits of having access to a bunch of tools and, giving my agent the ability to do a bunch of things, but I don't have to like load all that into context immediately. Which means I get better decision making at the beginning, because performance in prompts are typically the best at the very beginning of said prompt, of the context window, I should say. And then I also don't have to pay a lot of money for it. So just another point towards Anthropic minimizing our total costs, which I think I very much appreciate. So just because this is a practical course, I'm actually going to show you an example of this. I'm going to draft out a task. I'm then going to try it with an MCP server, which is going to be 1/10 of the time to implement. And then if it works, I'm going to build a skill to do it instead. What I want to do today, sort of like my task, is I want to label my emails. So what I'm going to do, if you think about it, the task is really, I'm going to list last, I don't know, X emails. I'm going to have Claude read them. And then I'll also have it label according to some scheme, that I put together. And in this way, I'm not going to replace the job of an email manager, but I'm going to make the job of an email manager much easier. And if later on I want Claude to, I don't know, manage my emails or whatever, well, now it'll have some pre-existing labels and organized structures for it. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to Claude. Let's go to anti-gravity. I'm going to do this in the GUI this time, not the other mechanism, not the terminal, because I don't think fast mode is super important for this. And I'm just going to say, hey, I want to organize my personal mailbox. Could you provide me a list of high ROI labels that tend to work well for personal mailboxes? Just make sure the thinking tab is on because I want it to really think hard. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to one of my personal mailboxes, and then I'm going to basically implement this. I really like action-based. That sounds great. Keep that for now. And then I'm going to open up one of my mailboxes here. We have tons of different emails. Most of these are spam, to be honest, or little demos that I put together for, whatever purpose. I'm also part of what looks to be like a Slack workspace for one of my businesses. I think I just did that because I wanted to test what this looked like. Now that that's done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to see how I can implement the Gmail MCP really quickly. Great, this looks solid. How do I use the Gmail MCP? It's now going to go and search for Gmail MCP, first in my folders, and then it'll ask me what it wants me to do. I want to set one up, so it's going to start doing some searches for Gmail MCP servers. I'm also going to do some searching myself. There are probably 3 or 4 different ones that realistically work. This looks to be a pretty interesting repo. So what I could do is I could just use this puppy. That looks nice. I just paste this in. It looks like I actually beat Claude to something for once. Now it's going to compare. Great, let's do it. It's a personal Gmail. Is that okay? Okay, it's now going to walk me through. So I'm going to give this button a click. Okay, I went through and I got that data. I'm now going to paste this in. It's going to go find the credentials file that I just uploaded. Now it can do what it needs to do. I just need to restart the Claude Code session. So I'm just going to open up a new one here. Then I'll go back and then I'll say, hey, I want you to label my emails. Oh, and I don't actually remember. What was that scheme that it asked? Hey, I want you to label my emails according to this scheme. So now it's going to call the Gmail MCP. Okay, it's going to check the Gmail MCP tools. Just figured it out. We have a bunch of pre-existing labels, so it's just going to create a bunch on its own. The reason why this is occurring so quickly is because I'm using their fast mode. So it's about 2.5 times faster than usual. It's now reading through a bunch of emails, and now it's going to, in addition to thinking through them, go through and then do said labeling. And then, it's just going to continue doing this for as many emails as I say. So I think I said that I was going to do, 15 emails or something like that. This just did 10. So it's 15 inbox emails. Looks great. Why don't we do this for 100 emails in total? Now, if I go back into my email, which I think was over here, you can see that I now have different labels. Just got to refresh that. There's action required, a reference, and waiting on. So, if something requires my action, some security alerts and stuff like that, then that's one thing. If it's a reference, so this is just stuff that it's storing that, may be useful for me. And then there's waiting on down here. So now that, I've demonstrated that I could do this sort of thing pretty quickly with a setup that realistically only took me a few minutes, I want to turn this into a skill. So I'm actually going to pause this and I'll say, great, this worked really well. I'd like to turn this into a skill called Gmail_label. Basically, what I want you to do is just to call the Gmail API directly and then do all of this labeling for me instead of me having to use MCP, because skills are just a lot more token efficient than MCPs. Check out my other skills so you could see an example of how to format them and so on and so forth, and then write me a skill that effectively does this as well as uses Gmail scripts. Feed that puppy in and then press enter. Now I have some other skills that, might have something to do with Gmail. So if it finds them, then it'll probably just want to use those. Okay, cool. Looks like it's rebuilding it all, which is fantastic. We're going to do the Gmail label skill directory. So it's going to pump in somewhere right around here. Looks like I'm running into some error here. So we're going to have to do some debugging. Just going to paste this in directly. Okay, and it looks like we're just about to wrap this up. So now I'm going to select, say that it can see, edit my email labels and so on and so forth. Now that it's done, the authentication flow has completed. I may close this window. Going back over here now, it is created with full Gmail sheets and Drive access, which allow me to do this much faster. So you guys seeing just how much quicker this is? 100 emails immediately fetched. It's now reading and classifying all of them using direct API calls instead of MCP server tools. And then in addition, as I showed you guys earlier, we go to Gmail label. The only thing that's currently being loaded is this. And this is so much shorter than like the whole MCP skill stuff. So it fetched all 100. It's now categorizing them into 5 and 95. So it looks like 0 is waiting on, 95 are reference, and then 5 are action required. That was way faster than what we were doing previously, right? That would have taken probably like 5 to 10x the time. Looks great. Why don't we do another 100? And then time yourself. Tell me how long it took. Okay, it's now going to grab all of these. So it's just going to continue the filtering process by, using some Gmail stuff. Then it's also going to add some timing instrumentation. That's kind of cool, just because I'm curious. Fetch was 1 second. So we fetched 100 emails in 1 second compared to previously where it took significantly longer, because I think the MCP tooling had like some built-in thing. Cool. The end result was it was 36 seconds to fetch, classify, and label 100 emails, about 3.6 seconds per email. Sorry, 0.36 seconds per email, if you think about it that way. Then it also gave me some, breakdowns and stuff like that of what it is. I could run this across like my several thousand outstanding emails if I wanted to. I could also do things like have it automatically generate replies to each email. We could build a sub-agent, which I'll show you guys how to do stuff like that in a moment, where we, split each into a parallel tasks and so on and so forth. Sky's really the limit here. Okay, next up, I want to chat a tiny bit about Claude Code plugins. I personally don't use plugins a ton, but they are out there, and so it's fair if I'm building a masterclass course all about Claude Code, might as well know what the heck these are. Simplest and easiest way to access plugins is just go customize and manage plugins. It'll show you the plugins that you currently have installed. As you see, the only one that I have installed so far is called Claude-mem at the .mac. This is basically a simple, straightforward plugin that basically just adds all of the messages in any Claude instance to some memory file, and then Claude can run searches over it if I say, hey, what did I ask you about 2 weeks ago? So, it's marginally useful. You then have access directly from Claude to a bunch of other ones that are somewhat useful. They have like front-end design, for instance, which is kind of cool. So this is Anthropic's own library, which improves the quality, at least they say it improves the quality of front-end work. You can build sexier and cleaner designs and stuff like that. I don't know. It's kind of 50-50. They say like if you're doing stuff without the aesthetics prompt, it looks like this. And then if you're doing it with the aesthetics prompt, it looks like that.